Ever since I did my first film, I think that I really want to get into this business and learn the craft of acting and really try to figure out what it is all about and how you can get good in at it. So I think it was that first film that really inspired me.
30+ years later, people are still talking about it, still rewatching it, still arguing about whether it's better than the original. And here's the thing, they're not wrong to argue, because Terminator 2, Judgment Day isn't just a great sequel. It's a movie that shouldn't exist at all. Locked in legal quicksand for years, written in 7 weeks flat, shot on a ticking clock, and somehow became the highest-grossing film of 1991. But you already know what happens on screen. What you probably don't know is what was happening behind it. Today, we're going 21 facts deep on one of the greatest action films ever made. Not just trivia, the stuff that makes you look at every single scene differently. The accidents that became iconic moments, the decisions that nearly killed the whole production, the one actor who forgot to set an alarm and almost erased one of the most memorable deleted scenes in Hollywood history. Stay with us all the way to fact number 1, because what happened to this film decades later is something nobody in that steel mill finale could have predicted. Hit like, drop your favorite T2 moment in the comments, and let's get into it. Fact 21. Arnold was paid $21,000 per word. Let's start with the math, because the math is insane. Arnold Schwarzenegger was paid approximately $15 million to appear in Terminator 2, staggering for 1991. But here's what makes it legendary. The T-800 speaks roughly 700 words across the entire film. Do the division. That's approximately $21,000 per word. "I'll be back," a line he'd already delivered for free in the first film, suddenly worth a small fortune. "Hasta la vista, baby." Practically a mortgage payment. No problemo. That one probably covered someone's car, insurance included.
Chill out, dickwad.
That's great, see, you're getting it.
No problemo.
Schwarzenegger's value was never really in the dialogue. It was in the posture, the walk, the way the man could make a pair of tinted sunglasses feel genuinely threatening. The most expensive element in a $102 million blockbuster wasn't the liquid metal villain, the helicopter stunts, or the groundbreaking CGI. It was a guy in a leather jacket whose primary communication style was silence. Arnold Schwarzenegger alone was roughly 15% of the total budget before he said a single word on set. Most expensive, strong, silent type in Hollywood history. Worth every penny. Fact 20. The film almost never got made because of a $1 divorce settlement. T2 existing at all is something close to a miracle, and it almost didn't happen because of one of the strangest financial arrangements in Hollywood history. After the original Terminator became a hit, the rights were split 3 ways. Hemdale Film Corporation held 50%, James Cameron held a portion, and Cameron had sold his share to producer Gail Ann Hurd during their 1989 divorce for exactly $1. $1. That's the transaction that nearly held up one of the most lucrative sequels in cinema history. Cameron already had a difficult history with Hemdale's John Daly, who had tried to interfere with the ending of the original film. Going back to work under that arrangement? Cameron's position was essentially, absolutely not. For years, the rights just sat there, tangled in old grudges and bad blood. What finally broke the deadlock was Arnold, being Arnold. Schwarzenegger knew Hemdale was in financial trouble, went straight to Carolco Pictures and told them, go buy those rights. Carolco obliged, $10 million to Hemdale, $5 million to Hurd, $17 million total before a single frame was shot. The reason T2 exists isn't fate, it isn't Skynet, it's contract law, old grudges, and a very well-timed phone call. Fact 19. The script was written in 7 weeks. Here's a detail that should terrify every writer who has ever complained about a deadline. With the rights secured and Carolco committed, James Cameron and co-writer William Wisher had approximately 7 weeks to write the entire script. 7 weeks. For a film that would run nearly 2.5 hours, feature multiple massive set pieces, introduce a groundbreaking new villain, flesh out a complete emotional arc between 3 main characters, and handle time travel logic without collapsing under its own weight. 7 weeks. Cameron has said they were working around the clock. The finished script covered everything. Nightmare sequences, the liquid metal T-1000, the father-figure dynamic between John and the T-800, the logic of Skynet, the emotional mechanics of the finale, all assembled under a deadline most studios wouldn't give a romantic comedy. That impossible schedule rolled directly into production without breathing room. A locked release date was already in place. The train was moving. Everybody jumped on. Here's what that means for the rest of this list. Virtually everything you're about to hear happened under maximum pressure, maximum speed, and minimum margin for error. The miracle isn't just that T2 was good. The miracle is that it was finished. Fact 18. Some theaters got their reels at the last possible moment. The sprint didn't stop at cut. It went all the way to opening night. Editors Conrad Buff, Mark Goldblatt, and Richard A. Harris were cutting the film right up against the deadline, while labs simultaneously cranked out prints. This was 1991. Physical reels, physical distribution, no digital upload. You couldn't push a button and send a file. Somebody had to physically drive reels to theaters.
And back he is, shooting, cycling, clubbing, and creating mayhem whenever things aren't going his way.
Some cinemas reportedly received their prints just hours before opening. Think about that. The highest-grossing film of 1991, the movie that changed action cinema. And some projectionists were threading reels barely in time for the lights to go down, the cinematic equivalent of sliding your homework under the door as the bell is already ringing. Except the homework cost $102 million and needed to open in thousands of theaters simultaneously. From the outside, a precisely engineered mega hit. From the inside, an over-caffeinated, sleep-deprived race to the finish that somehow crossed the line exactly on time. Fact 17. The T-1000 was impossible until it wasn't. James Cameron wanted a liquid metal villain in the first Terminator. Go back and read that sentence again. He didn't come up with the T-1000 for the sequel. He wanted it from the beginning. The technology just didn't exist yet. Mid-1980s visual effects told him, lovely idea, and no. So Cameron shelved the concept and went with the practical genius of the original, a metal endoskeleton beneath human flesh, courtesy of Stan Winston's workshop. By T2, everything had changed. Cameron had already explored digital morphing in the abyss. He went to Dennis Muren at Industrial Light and Magic and asked, could that concept be made metallic, reflective, humanoid, and capable of morphing in real time on screen? Muren said yes. Associate VFX supervisor Mark Dipp developed new scanning techniques to capture Robert Patrick's movements, forming the digital foundation for the CGI models.
At the making of the models, the studying Robert Patrick, we got Robert and he was up here and we painted a grid on him and shot a lot of footage of him.
The result required approximately 52 computer-generated shots, stitched with Stan Winston's practical prosthetics for bullet damage, blade transformations, and mid-melt sequences. ILM was genuinely inventing tools that didn't exist. The T-1000 was a risk that could have turned the production into an expensive disaster. Instead, it changed what audiences believed was possible on screen, and it still holds up. Fact 16. Robert Patrick trained like a predator to play a machine. The CGI was only part of the equation. The other part was an actor from Georgia who decided to make himself genuinely unsettling to be around on set. Robert Patrick didn't just show up and play a robot. He studied predators, eagles, sharks, big cats, specifically to understand how apex hunters move when locked on a target. No wasted motion, no visible effort, absolute focus. He trained 4 times a day to sprint at full speed without showing any physical strain. No heavy breathing, no flushed face, no heaving chest. He trained his eye contact to be completely unblinking. For the Galleria shooting sequence, he drilled until he could fire and reload without breaking his gaze or letting his face register anything at all. What Patrick created wasn't an angry villain, it was something worse. A system executing a task. The vibe, as one crew member described it, was malware in human form hunting its next file. The T-1000 works because 3 entirely different things fused perfectly. A concept too ambitious for mid-80s technology, an effects team inventing new techniques in real time, and a human being who trained himself to move like something that was never alive, still unsettling 30-plus years later. Fact 15. Linda Hamilton used her real twin sister for the creepiest scene in the film. You know the scene. Sarah Connor in the steel mill. And then, there are two of them. The T-1000 has assumed her shape, and the real Sarah has to make her son understand which one is which before it's too late. No CGI, no split screen, no digital compositing. Linda Hamilton's real-life twin sister, Leslie Hamilton Guerin, a nurse by profession, not an actress, played the duplicate Sarah. The two performed on a duplicate set, carefully positioned and lit, so the camera could capture both in frame simultaneously and let your brain do the rest. The same trick appeared in the mental hospital security guard kill. Twin actors Don and Dan Stanton, one playing the real guard, one playing the liquid metal copy. While the effects team was inventing new software to melt Robert Patrick on screen, the film's most disorienting moments came from a very old, very simple technique. Find two of the same person, position them correctly, let the audience's brain fill in the rest. Sometimes the simplest solution is the one that stays with you longest. Fact 14. Edward Furlong was going through puberty during production. John Connor is supposed to be one kid having one catastrophically bad week. Behind the scenes, that week took long enough that Edward Furlong, 14 years old when production began, was going through a genuine growth spurt while the cameras were rolling. His voice was changing, he was getting taller, and the story took place over only a few days of in-universe time, which means continuity was a potential disaster. The crew shot scenes requiring the younger look earlier in the schedule. Then came the toolkit, apple boxes, specific camera angles to disguise his growth, careful blocking to avoid visual discrepancies between scenes shot weeks apart. Sound editors adjusted the pitch on some of Furlong's lines in post to smooth over the voice change. If you've ever rewatched T2 and felt something was slightly off about John's voice, now you know.
I mean, you're like a machine underneath, right?
The actor was sprinting through puberty while the character was trying to prevent the apocalypse. Edward Furlong literally grew up on screen, one pitch-corrected line at a time. Fact 13. Joe Morton's death scene was built around his own collapsed lung. For a character who enters halfway through and exits in an explosion, Miles Dyson leaves a mark that lingers. The reason his death scene feels so raw comes from a place nobody on set expected. When production was working out how Dyson should die, shot in the chest, holding a detonator so the others could escape, they couldn't nail the physicality. How does a man breathe when his lung has been compromised? Joe Morton had an answer. Years before T2, his own lung had collapsed in a car accident. He told Cameron, "This character just got shot in the chest, so I'm sure he's breathing the same way," and showed him exactly what that felt like from the inside.
I don't know how much longer I can hold this.
Cameron's reaction was immediate. They built the entire death scene around what Morton demonstrated. That broken, stuttering, labored breathing in those final moments isn't a technical choice. It's an actor reaching back into one of the worst moments of his own life and putting it on screen. On paper, Dyson is the man who accidentally creates the apocalypse. On screen, because of Morton, he becomes the man who fully understands what he has done and chooses to die trying to fix it. Something genuinely hard to rewatch, even though you always do. Fact 12. James Cameron hired nuclear consultants for the nightmare sequence. If you first saw T2 as a child, one sequence almost certainly stayed lodged in your brain longer than the truck chase, longer than the steel mill, longer than any of the action, the playground, the kids, the flash, and then everything. Cameron and his team did not approach that sequence with sci-fi shorthand. They hired actual nuclear warfare consultants and studied archival blast footage. The flash, the expanding fireball, the shockwave tearing through Los Angeles, the skin peeling away from bodies clinging to the fence, all built on real research. Here's the detail that sounds like a joke. They couldn't scale up a conventional explosion to create the mushroom cloud. The physics don't work that way. A regular explosion scaled up doesn't produce the right shape, the right slow billowing unfurl of nuclear aftermath. So they put a dancer in a cloud costume and filmed them physically acting out the motion of a nuclear blast rising. Somewhere inside the most disturbing sequence in a summer blockbuster is a person in a costume doing interpretive dance. It works perfectly, which somehow makes it worse. Critics called it one of the most disturbingly realistic depictions of nuclear annihilation ever staged in a mainstream film. For audiences living with Cold War anxiety, that playground turning to ash hit somewhere specific. Fact 11. Cameron compared the Terminator to the Tin Man. This is the boldest move the entire film makes, and it isn't the liquid metal. It's turning the single most effective horror villain of the 1980s into a broken, bulletproof father figure. In the Terminator, the T-800 is pure nightmare. Sunglasses, dead eyes, zero mercy. By the end of that film, you're not sure humanity survives something like this. In T2, same chassis, different programming. And the movie doesn't just flip a switch and announce the change, it earns it. John Connor doesn't treat this machine like a weapon assigned to protect him. He treats it like a broken adult who needs basic human interaction lessons. He teaches it slang. He teaches it how to laugh.
See that guy over there? That's a smile. That's good.
He teaches it how to walk into a room without making everyone want to run. One line, you can't just go around killing people. And the machine that ended police officers by the dozen in the first film has a no-kill rule. From that point forward, the T-800 is kneecapping instead of executing. Cameron described it as the Tin Man finally getting a heart. The man who gave the 1980s its scariest robot spent the sequel turning his creation into Dorothy's traveling companion, but with considerably more kneecapping. By the time the steel mill arrives, something quiet has happened. Sarah still sees a tool. John sees the only adult in his life who has never lied to him, never abandoned him, never failed to show up. Fact 10. The thumbs up was set up, hours before it paid off. Of all the ways for an unstoppable killing machine to exit a franchise, who predicted an emotional thumbs up in molten steel? The T-800's final goodbye isn't a speech. It doesn't suddenly discover poetry. It uses the only emotional vocabulary it has accumulated across 2.5 hours of film, and deploys it at the exact moment it will hit hardest. John had shown the Terminator how to do a thumbs up earlier. A throwaway moment. Kid teaching his robot dad how to be slightly less terrifying. Nobody catalogs it as setup, and then, sinking into molten steel, the machine does the one human thing it learned. One thumb up, going under. What makes the shot devastating is how small it is. No swelling orchestral moment, just a steel hand, a gesture a child taught it, and the glow closing over everything. You came for the killer robots and the one-liners. The image that burned itself into your brain is a fist slowly disappearing beneath liquid metal. The quiet gesture hits harder than every explosion that preceded it. Fact 9. Schwarzenegger wore Hawaiian shorts to the biker bar, and it made the scene better. If you're reintroducing one of cinema's most iconic monsters after 7 years, your opening statement matters. The biker bar scene is T2 announcing itself. The T-800 walks in, scans the room, informs a biker with absolute calm that he needs his clothes, his boots, and his motorcycle.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
10 seconds later, the biker is on the floor and Arnold is walking out in full gear. Here is the part that makes it better. Schwarzenegger showed up to film his arrival, nude before acquiring the biker's clothes, wearing the loudest Hawaiian board shorts he could find. Cameron confirmed it. The real bikers used as extras looked down in genuine shock and visible confusion, which was exactly the reaction the scene needed. What makes it even better? The scene almost didn't exist. When the budget ballooned, a studio executive pushed to cut it. Cameron refused. The executive went to Arnold directly, hoping he could be pressured into talking Cameron out of it. Arnold's response, paraphrased, only a studio person would cut a scene like that. The scene stayed. It works because it fakes you out completely. Anyone walking in cold assumes the T-800 is still the villain. Then the story slowly pivots him into something else entirely. The fastest way to flip a character's role is to reintroduce them exactly as you remember them, then change everything they do next. Fact 8. The LA River truck stunt had a hard noon deadline. The LA River chase sequence is the kind of thing you feel in your spine even on a small screen. John on a dirt bike, the T-1000 in a semi-truck, a lot of very unforgiving concrete. The production didn't fake the moment where the truck drops into the channel. Stunt coordinator Joel Kramer and second unit director Gary Davis built a false plaster wall concealing a hidden ramp, then drove a real Freightliner semi-truck through it at 60 miles per hour and let it drop 30 feet into the concrete riverbed. The impact was exactly as brutal as it looks, because it was real. The crew had a permit until noon. A failed stunt meant a six-figure loss with no second attempt. On the first try, the truck failed to reach speed and veered away from the wall. They fixed the pulley system, reset, got it on the second attempt. Before noon, 8 cameras rolled simultaneously, 4 in the channel, 4 along the wall, because nobody was betting the entire sequence on a single angle. Near-miss moments were built on precise choreography calculated to look dangerous without destroying the lead actor. A real helicopter also flew under a 20-foot overpass during the chase. It still feels physically dangerous in an era of digital everything, because it was. Fact 7. Michael Biehn almost missed his one day of filming. Kyle Reese died in the original Terminator. His story was done. But Cameron wrote a deleted scene bringing Michael Biehn back as a dream sequence, appearing to Sarah in her hospital cell, telling her John is now the primary target, pushing her to keep fighting. A direct emotional bridge between the two films. Cameron ultimately cut it for pacing. Story still works, but here's the footnote. Biehn apparently forgot he was scheduled to film that day and overslept. Linda Hamilton had already been running rehearsals by the time he arrived. The scene, considered by many to be one of the most emotionally resonant pieces of excised footage in the franchise, almost didn't exist because one actor didn't set an alarm. Cameron also cut the chip removal scene, in which Sarah and John crack open the T-800's skull to switch its CPU from read-only to learning mode. Sarah wants to destroy the chip. John fights to keep the Terminator alive and capable of growth. It's the entire father-figure argument compressed into one scene, and Cameron still cut it because the story worked without it. Later, special editions brought both scenes back, turning T2 into a treasure hunt for fans who wanted every layer the theatrical cut had quietly removed. Fact 6. T2 expanded into a theme park with the entire original cast. T2 didn't end at the steel mill, it expanded. At Universal Studios, T2 3D, Battle Across Time, became a theme park attraction that functioned as a genuine mini-sequel. Cameron directed it. Schwarzenegger, Hamilton, Furlong, and Patrick all came back, not as archival footage, not as lookalikes, as themselves. The show mixed live stunt performers with 3D film footage to send John and the Terminator into Skynet's future war before a confrontation with an upgraded killing machine. For a significant portion of the fan base, this was the real continuation of T2, not a cash grab, but an exclusive follow-up you had to physically travel to experience. Outside the parks, the film became a full brand ecosystem, video games on virtually every platform, an arcade shooter consuming quarters in malls across the country, and comics and novels expanding the war with Skynet. Years before cinematic universes became the dominant Hollywood model, T2 wasn't just a movie. You could play Judgment Day, read Judgment Day, and in certain theme parks, get fake shot at by it. Fact 5. The budget was $102 million in 1991, when that was genuinely insane. Let's put a number in context. The original Terminator was made for approximately $6.4 million, a lean, gritty thriller that worked largely because its constraints forced creative solutions. T2's budget landed at approximately $102 million in 1991 for a sci-fi sequel, at a time when that figure represented a genuinely staggering bet on a franchise whose first installment was a scrappy, low-budget thriller that happened to become a phenomenon. Carolco Pictures was wagering its future on the assumption that audiences would show up at a scale nobody had attempted for this kind of film. The rights acquisition alone cost $17 million. Arnold's salary was $15 million. The visual effects were uncharted territory. T2 became the highest-grossing film of 1991. The bet paid off completely, but from inside the production, that knowledge wasn't available. They were flying at full speed over terrain that didn't have a map. Fact 4. The 4 Oscars it won weren't even the most important part of its legacy. T2 swept its technical categories at the Academy Awards: Best Visual Effects, Best Makeup, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Effects Editing. 4 Oscars, plus Saturn Awards including Best Science Fiction Film, Best Director, Best Actress for Linda Hamilton, Best Young Actor for Edward Furlong, and Best Special Effects. But the critical reception at release wasn't just positive, it was stunned. Critics went in expecting a loud, expensive sequel and came out writing about fate, parenting, and whether humanity deserves to survive. The conversation around T2 wasn't just good action movie. It was about what the film did to the rules of the sequel itself. It took the monster from the first film and made him the protector. It took the victim and made her the hardened warrior. It took a sci-fi slasher and converted it into a meditation on free will and the consequences of creation. That critical conversation never really stopped. The debate about whether T2 or the original is the better film has been running for 30 years. You only have that argument about things that actually matter to you. Fact 3. The film was preserved in the National Film Registry in 2023. In 2023, 32 years after its release, the Library of Congress selected Terminator 2, Judgment Day for preservation in the National Film Registry. The criteria: films deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant to American cinema. Read that again. What started as, let's bring back the killer robot but make him the good guy, ended up on the list of films the United States government has decided to preserve for future generations. Somewhere in a vault, being carefully protected for people who haven't been born yet, is Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "Hasta la vista, baby."
Hasta la vista, baby.
A form of time travel even Skynet didn't plan for. Fact 2. The film rewrote the rules of what a sequel could be. Before T2, the conventional wisdom on sequels was essentially give them more of the same, scaled up, more explosions, more of whatever worked the first time. Don't fix what isn't broken. Cameron did something different. He took the element that wasn't broken, the T-800, and broke it deliberately. He inverted the premise entirely. The thing that made the first film terrifying became the thing that gave the second film its heart. That decision rippled through Hollywood for decades. You can trace a direct line from T2's success to a generation of filmmakers who started asking, what if the sequel doesn't just extend the story, but interrogates it? What if the follow-up challenges the assumptions the original built? T2 demonstrated that a franchise audience wasn't just showing up for comfort food. They could be surprised, they could be moved, they could cry at the end of an action movie because of a robot's thumbs up. That sounds simple. At the time, it was genuinely radical. Fact 1. Everything you've just heard happened in approximately 18 months. Here's the fact that should make everything else on this list land differently. From the moment Carolco secured the rights to the moment T2 opened in theaters, the rights acquisition, the script written in 7 weeks, the pre-production, the full shoot, the visual effects work that required inventing new tools in real time, the editing right up against the deadline, the physical reels delivered to theaters at the last possible moment. All of it happened in roughly 18 months. A $102 million, Oscar-winning, highest-grossing film of 1991, sequel rules rewriting masterpiece, preserved by the Library of Congress, built in a year and a half. The next time someone tells you they need more time, you know what to tell them. That's 21 weird facts about Terminator 2, Judgment Day. And we haven't even touched everything. That's how deep this movie goes. Drop your favorite moment from T2 in the comments. The thumbs up, the biker bar, the playground nightmare, the truck drop into the LA River. We already know half of you are going to say the same scene, and we respect it completely. If this one hit right, hit like, subscribe, and send it to someone who owns this movie on at least 2 different physical formats. You know exactly who they are. Until next time, I'll be back.